It's said that whenever the next large war happens, it will happen over water.
Throughout the world, piped water supply is 24/7.
Yeah.
When you open the tap, it should be giving you water directly, and it should be potable water, right? This is the basic minimum service that an institution should give you. Otherwise, what do? We build some tanks, we put pump there, we build an overhead tank, and in our homes, we have an RO system or a UV system or a water filter. All these costs are borne by us as individuals because the state fails to deliver good, clean water in our taps.
Why is Brahmaputra such an important resource to China?
At the current rate, we go, as you see, with air pollution, with solid waste management, with our traffic and transportation, and now with pollution, with our water scarcity and water body, we are quickly reaching unlivability.
Next 20 years?
Even in 5 years, it will become unlivable. We Indians also don't demand from our institutions. If you ask in India, how many days do you want water in a week? 2 days is good enough. How many hours in those 2 days? 4 hours is good enough. We've gotten into a chalta hai attitude. We're happy and satisfied with the bare minimum because we're in such a lousy situation. Yeah. Metro stations में toilets नहीं हुआ करते थे. जब हम जाके as civic groups we said कि भाई there should be a toilet here. The then MD said that I'm not a Sulabh Shauchalaya person, I'm a metro person. So it took 3 years of persuasion before toilets came up in metro stations. Every building, every apartment, every institution should be doing rainwater harvesting. Then we can avoid floods. Doesn't matter how rich you are. If somebody upstream is leaving the water out, you will be drowned.
Can India leapfrog to where the China GDP is or where US GDP is in the next 10 to 20 years?
Short answer is no.
Hi, this is Siddhartha Ahluwalia. Welcome to the Neon Show. Today, I have a super special guest with me. He has worked for the last 38 years of his life solving the water crisis in India. I welcome Vishwanath Srikantaiah, sir, on Neon Show. So glad to have you, sir, on the podcast.
Thank you, and you can just call me Vishwanath. It'll be a pleasure. And you reminded me of my age with the 38 years of experience.
So I'm super excited because we get very few opportunities to host people like you who have dedicated their life to such an important issue. So I want to start with a background of it's said that whenever the next large war happens, right, it will happen over water because such a crucial resource. Few of the last wars globally have happened over oil, and I think India-China war, somewhere water played a key role in that war. Because China wanted entire of Arunachal Pradesh, not because they wanted more land. They have all the land in the world, including Taiwan, Hong Kong. They wanted the entire Brahmaputra river. So want to start with that.
So let me also start with this very interesting idea that you've put forward and put the resource of water in current situation, yes. Right? We are 3.3 million square kilometers as a land mass. We are also a destiny of geology. 80 to 90 million years back, the Himalayas rose and they created the monsoon winds, and we get these rains which deliver 4,000 billion cubic meters annually, right? But these 4,000 billion cubic meters falls in 4 months essentially, June, July, August, September, right? Now the challenge for India is that we have to hold this 4 months of water for the rest of the 8 months. And that's the biggest challenge for India. However, in India itself, though the Himalayas rose up, what we now call the Indo-Gangetic Plain, Banaras all the way to Hooghly, Kolkata, from Delhi, sank. And the silt from the Himalayas, thanks to the monsoon rains, was deposited here over 300 million years. This is the most fertile place on earth, the Indo-Gangetic Plain. This supports a population of 600 million people, the world's densest population. All this was possible because of the waters that we had and the soil that was there with us, which was very productive soil. And that's the reason why India is the largest populated country in the world, because our land is very fertile and productive. We have enough water resources, and we have learned over years to manage this water well. We've also learned to give good quality water. You mentioned 2 lakh people dying, but India has invested the largest sum of money in what's called the Swachh Bharat mission in getting clean sanitation, and now the Jal Jeevan mission to get clean water. Because of clean water and sanitation, our average life in independence, which was 35 years, is now 72 years. We are a very healthy population. We are a growing population. We are a young population. So we've achieved a lot with water. What we are now facing is the ecological limits are reached. How do we now manage water with old wisdom, but with new technology? That's the challenge. And I think we have solutions. The only thing is, how do we go about it?
And let's talk about one of the largest wars that happened in India, the India-China war, right? Why is Brahmaputra such an important resource to China, right? Are there not any Chinese rivers that flow through China that they're focused on one part of land of India, that is Arunachal, and the
So
river?
we've got to also understand, like I spoke to you, China is 9.9 million square kilometers.
Yeah.
The USA is roughly the same. India is 3.3, one third the size. But when you come to arable land, that's the land that can be cultivated, India is actually in the same position as the USA and China. So we are blessed with a lot of fertile land, unlike China, where only the eastern part of China is productive. Yes. The western part is essentially desert and the southern part is cold desert, right? And so for them, the resource is to be competed for. And a growing economy like India's or China's demands a lot of water. If the economy grows at 7.5% GDP, water consumption also increases at 7.5%. That then causes the conflict. But there are other territorial ambitions that China has. Perhaps that's a cause for discussion in an external affairs argument. However, rest assured that if we are able to manage the Brahmaputra, which falls within India, we will not lose much water to the Chinese dreams of building dams, because roughly 80% of the water that flows in the Brahmaputra actually is rainfall which falls on the tributaries of the Brahmaputra.
And one of the reasons that has been highlighted historically is of the entire Brahmaputra, right? It originates in China, but 70% of it flows through India. Correct. And 30% is only in China.
Correct. So it starts in Tibet, and it starts in the Manasarovar area where the Ganges also starts, Ganga starts, Yamuna starts, Brahmaputra, Mekong. All of these rivers start there in Tibet. What is Tibet? And it flows, and then it comes to India. But if we are able to internally manage our waters well, we should not face a threat. We have to protect our land integrity. We have to protect our borders, no doubt about that. But we need not obsessively worry about the control that China will exert on us. If we do our job right, we are good.
In 1950s and 60s, India signed a treaty with Pakistan.
Yes.
Where India got between the rivers that flow between the Indo-Pakistan region, only the 3 rivers were given to India. The rest of the water flows to Pakistan. And any insight around right, what happened during that time?
So water is to be shared. The Indus Treaty is given as an example globally as to how 2 countries can go to war 3 times, yet be in a position to share the waters. Yes, we were given 3 of the 5 Punjab, the 5 rivers which flows through Punjab. 3 was with India, 2 was with Pakistan. But we've done a reasonably good job with the waters that we've collected and we've managed. And the upstream, downstream angle of conflict will always be there. It's between India and Pakistan, but it's also within India. Karnataka and Tamil Nadu is a classic case with Cauvery where we disagree with water. However, our statesmanship and our ability to be concerned about humanity as a whole comes from looking at the entire river basin and sharing the waters rather than trying to see that we capture it. So the Indus Water Treaty, incubated by the World Bank, is a model globally, and we should be proud of the model that we are able to stand up to those values that India always shows to the rest of the world what we stand for.
Vasudhaiva
Kutumbakam, but also concern for humanity at large. Absolutely right.
So now you mentioned Cauvery water. It's one of my favorite topics because I migrated to Bangalore with my family 5 years ago. I was living in Whitefield part of it, and every day I saw 5 tankers coming.
Correct.
It piqued my curiosity. And someday when there was zero water in the society, it was said that this is happening because of Cauvery water crisis. I read about it but could never fully understand it. If you can go back to history, right? Why is this conflict of Cauvery water? How did this happen? And what are we doing to solve it?
So, as in any river basin, as in the Cauvery river basin, it's the delta area of the river which is the most fertile. We'll learn about it in our 5th and 6th geography classes, right? So, obviously, the delta portion of the Cauvery is Thanjavur in Tamil Nadu, which is the rice bowl of India. If Punjab is the wheat bowl of India, then the Thanjavur belt is the rice bowl of India. For a long time, the people of Tamil Nadu cultivated 2 crops of rice. With the introduction of the Green Revolution, they started to cultivate the third crop of rice. This was to bring food security to the country as a whole. So that was the outlook. And the more crops you grow, the more stomachs you're able to fill. And that's the reason it is. But at the same time, Bangalore as a city started to develop in the 70s, 80s, and actually in the 90s. Now, water had to be transferred from agriculture to urban areas and to industrial areas. But the river water was already fully utilized. In 8 to 9 out of 10 years, the water does not even reach the sea. It's what is called a closed basin. So the dispute started off with first right to water, which is called the right of prior appropriation, or the new right to water, when the new right is coming up, right? So there are two principles globally. One is called the Hormones Doctrine, which is the Secretary of State in the United States, Hormone, who put this principle saying that all rain that falls on my land belongs to me. And then there's the law of prior appropriation saying that I have been using the water historically, so therefore I have established a right to it. Between these two lies what's called the Helsinki Principle or the Helsinki Doctrine, which means that there is some respect for prior appropriation, but there's also a respect for the new use that has to come up, and that sharing has to happen. Unfortunately, because the river basin is broken into administrative boundaries, which are based on linguistics, we tend to go to war. And we tend to not go to war, but disagree with each other vehemently and vigorously. And that's because of the new emerging water demand. Which is coming from cities like Bangalore and places in Karnataka which need irrigation water. And Tamil Nadu fears that it's going to lose out on water.
And in one of our very interesting conversations that it was either not Karnataka or Tamil Nadu right now, it was when British partitioned India, it was Madras Residency. And then the Indian government had to linguistically separate the states. But I think the thought was not that how will the resources get shared among the state.
Yes, so the grievance that Karnataka has that during a time when the British were dominating the Madras presidency, they did not allow the construction of dams in the then old Mysore state. The KRS dam, which is the pride for Karnataka, took years before it was allowed to be built, and it was allowed to be built at the same time as Mettur, which is double the size of KRS, right? And so Tamil Nadu has been seen to be appropriating more of the waters because of the powers they have. But if you go to Tamil Nadu, and I'm a Kannadiga, but then I also see the worldview from the Tamil lens, and it's not good to be divided on linguistic or state basis because we are Indians first and then we are Kannadigas or Tamilians. If we keep that worldview, one can understand the fear that comes from losing out on something which is a tradition and culture. If I've been using water to grow rice, and if somebody upstream now starts to take away the water, I fear whether I will be able to grow rice. So we have to be sympathetic to both the states and especially the farmers of both the states and see what we can do to share the water judiciously. I'll give you just one more example on this particular lens, which we have not seen so far. For example, Bangalore's demand on water is about 1,450 million liters per day from the Cauvery, right? And this is seen as the city is taking away the water from farmers. However, Bangalore only takes 6.66% of Karnataka's allocation of Cauvery waters and supports roughly 50% of Karnataka's population in the Cauvery basin. It also generates 70% of the GDP of the state. This 1,450 million liters, which comes from the Cauvery, generates 70% of the GDP of the state. GDP of Bangalore is estimated as $350 billion. Imagine that's the kind of money which goes as GST, tax, and which supports all sorts of social infrastructure services, schools, hospitals, colleges, roads, everything is supported by this. Actually, 1,450 million liters coming in the river water, right? Then Bangalore does something remarkable. It takes this treated water which we have consumed in our houses, into sewage treatment plants, treats it and sends it to Kolar and Chikbalapur, surrounding districts which are drought prone and climate change affected, and fills 200 lakes, which means that the groundwater table comes up and farmers have assured water. Groundwater tables in Kolar and Chikbalapur had plummeted to 1,800 feet. Now they're at 20 feet, 30 feet in some places. Open wells have water. Farmers have livelihood security. In turn, the city has food security because if the farmer grows food, it comes back to the city and the city has food security. So what the Cauvery water has done is it's made a pit stop in Bangalore for 12 hours and then gone to the farmer's field. So Bangalore is not consuming any water at all. And when all the projects are done, when all the treated wastewater will go to these surrounding districts, it will be the world's second largest project of its kind, next only to that of Mexico City. So therefore, we have to see multiple uses of water. We have to see that urban and agricultural uses combine together, and that ecology and environment is regenerated. When the lakes are full, birds come flocking back, biodiversity increases, livelihoods are created. All this is possible, and we are showing the way. Now, if more and more cities and towns along the Cauvery do this as an example, I don't think that we should be fighting unnecessarily over the water. Solutions are there. We need a pragmatic politics to be able to push that solution.
So can you go back to the history of Bangalore? Like, there's a very interesting anecdote that you told that how was Bangalore formed through volcanic eruptions?
Right. So there's also a geology to Bangalore's history as much as there it is to India with the Himalayas growing up. Here, the volcanic action resulted in the plateau coming up to 920 meters above sea level, where you can go to Lal Bagh and see the rocks, which are 3,600 million years old. One of the oldest rocks in India is in Bangalore. This upheaval, which took us to 920 meters, gave us the beautiful climate that we have and the rainfall pattern that we have. So we have 8 months of rain, 63 days of rain, 970 millimeters of rain, all that because we are at this altitude, which geology gave us. But when geology pushes you up, it also pushes you away from the river. So therefore, every drop of water that we need has now to come up 100 kilometers and 300 meters up, right? Making one of Asia's costliest water. The old Bangalore did not need a river. It depended on the local tanks, as we call them, the lakes that were there, and the wells. The tanks filled the earth, and the wells water was used, which was filtered, and people used that water. But in 1874, 75, and 76, we had 3 continuous years of drought. In those years of drought, the lakes dried up, the wells dried up. About 1 lakh people died in Bangalore. In the old Mysore presidency, people came here in search of water and food, and people died. The government then decided, never again. Never again will people die for scarcity of water and scarcity of food. So therefore, the first project was taken up to bring water from the river Arkavati, which is a tributary of the Cauvery, from Hesarghatta, bring it to the city using steam engines, wood-fired steam engines, as early as 1896. Since then, our dependency on local water bodies has stopped. We depend on rivers because of the memory of the drought and famine. And we've paid scant attention to the tanks and lakes. Now we are revisiting them because we now understand that both local waters and outside waters have to combine together, and we have to depend on the local waters too as much as the outside waters.
And what has been the history of lakes? Like you mentioned earlier that there were 1,000 lakes in Bangalore.
Correct. So the lakes themselves have a 1,200-year-old history, which is there in inscription stones. In most of the lakes, there are stones carved in granite which dates the lakes. So Hebbal, for example, is dated to 820 AD. Alsur is dated to somewhere around that time, 980. So 1,200 years back, our ancient forefathers threw earthen dams across valleys and held back the water flows. And this water was then there for the rest of the 6 months to grow crops essentially, but also to fill aquifers and wells and to take the water. These were cascading set of water bodies because the water flows in the valley in one direction. And we created this tank ecosystem, which is a wonderful cultural heritage we have, which is a water heritage we have. But their primary purpose was irrigation. The moment a city comes in, what happens is a city generates wastewater. Now, the same wastewater or sewage goes into these tanks. And then these tanks become smelly, mosquito breeding, and people themselves say, no, we don't want this. Take it away. Anyway, our drinking water is coming from pipes from far away. So the tanks are lost. Malaria was one reason why we lost a lot of tanks. Now we are realizing that we can revive these tanks and wetlands. They can be made disease-free and with fresh water, and they can be a source of not only recreation, but also biodiversity and functionality for the city. So we are revisiting those tanks.
And how many lakes we have lost?
We've lost a lot of lakes. What we now have are about 210 tanks in Bangalore. We must have lost about 800 tanks and lakes.
And what is the reason of losing?
So the reason, as I prescribed to you, the primary purpose why the tank was built was agriculture, was to grow rice. Once rice was no longer needed and real estate prices shot up, if a square feet of land is 4,000 rupees a square foot or 10,000 rupees a square foot, would you leave it as water or would you want to sell it by building an apartment? So greed, urbanization, the destruction of water quality, the coming of diseases such as plague and malaria and cholera, all this combination resulted in the tanks being filled up and urbanization coming up. So there's no villainy in this. There is only an incremental sadness to the approach that we have taken in destroying what is a heritage. But it's good that we have realized it now and we are trying to recover it.
And it's one of the very famous bus stops in Bangalore, right? I think it's Malleshwaram or the Shantinagar bus stops. It said that was a water body.
That's the Majestic bus stop. The largest bus stop in front of the city station was Dharmabudikere, the largest water body that was there. But again, that water body would dry up during the drought seasons or during bad years of rain, and it had become a swamp and a messy place, and so they filled it up and built a bus stand. Now we would not have done it.
Yes.
But with the knowledge that we had in the 60s and 70s, we did that. And not only that, the stadium that we have was Kempambudikere, which was one of the most beautiful lakes that the indoor stadium that we working on next to Malya Hospital. So like that, many of the tanks have become bus stands, hockey stadiums, or athletic stadiums, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And in the last 20 years, because of political reasons or governance reasons, many of these lakes got acquired by builders for cheap. They filled it up. That's what I've heard in folklore. They got filled it up with sand, drained the water, and now they built buildings. That has really been true.
No, not only did the private builders do this, but also the BDA itself, the government organization, filled up lakes and built layouts and apartments on it. It came from a sense of finding no purpose for the tank and seeing it as only a bad water body, and therefore to convert it to land. Now we realize that it's very important for flood control, for recharge of groundwater, and we are now trying to retrieve it.
Alsur Lake is one of the most famous lakes in Bangalore. There's once a story that Cafe Coffee Day wanted to build in the center of Alsur Lake a CCD center so that they could transport people by boat. It's the military that intervened, that because part of the lake is controlled by...
So here's the thing. If you want to protect a lake, you need an institution which has monies to be able to do that protection. It cannot happen on its own. So we created something called the Lake Development Authority, thanks to a high court ruling, which a lot of activists are taking the state to court. But we did not give them any financial budgets. Now, the only way they can raise budgets is through what is called a PPP model of public-private participation. And that private participation will only come in if there's some profit in it and some money flows, right? Financial flows. So what was imagined in Hebbal Lake was the Tatas would put up a hotel, and in Alsur Lake it was that Cafe Coffee Day would put up a restaurant. The only reason being that that's the only way you can earn money to protect the lake. Now we realize that it's a government asset and taxpayer money has to go in to protect the lakes. It should not be private money. And that lakes are common pool resources where everybody should have access without having to pay a fee, that people should be able to go there like we go to parks or forests and be able to enjoy the lake. So that's the new thinking that's come in, and we're working on it now.
You mentioned about a governance failure that happened that has led to the current situation that has been. What's the history and what has been, what happened really in governance failure?
So what happens is whenever society faces a problem, it has to create institutions which can then sort the problem, right? So when Bangalore faced water scarcity in the 1960s, it created the Bangalore Water Supply and Sewerage Board, a utility which had the capability to pump water from a faraway source and bring it to the city, and then also be able to set up sewerage networks and sewage treatment plants. Now, because the utility was created, it was then followed by the Delhi Jal Board, the Chennai Metropolitan Sewerage Board, and so on and so forth. Other cities built institutions which knew how to design for water and to design for sewage networks. So these were all 20th century institutions. In the 21st century, which is what we occupy, water is no longer one of supply side. In the 20th century, there was water everywhere. You built a dam, you used pumps, and you brought it to the city. So that's the skill you needed. Now, demand management, ecological restoration, social justice, these are the angles which we need to have our institutions with. Just to give you an example, the Bangalore Water Supply and Sewerage Board does not have a single hydrogeologist. The city has 500,000 bore wells at least. It pumps out 600 million liters per day. But the institution does not have a single hydrogeologist who's able to understand groundwater. So groundwater does not exist for the institution which is supposed to be supplying water to the citizens of Bangalore. So unless institutions are capacitated, have the right human resources, skills, and in the case of the river basin, for example, if we have a river basin institution which understands the river, manages the old forests, manages the sand, manages the catchment so that the river flows continuously and clearly, the river will not be managed. We'll fight about the waters. We don't have a river basin institutions. So we need to create the right institutions, and we need to capacitate these institutions with human resources and financial resources to be able to deliver solutions. Otherwise, we'll be putting Band-Aid on chickenpox. What chickenpox needs is a vaccination. You can't treat every pustule and be able to find a solution, right? So governance is at the heart of our water problems. It's not water, it's governance, and it's good management. And good governance means creating the right institutions and equipping the right people in the right institutions who are accountable but are also capable of delivering solutions.
What are the solutions that you and other activists have been proposing to the government to solve these issues?
One of the things which urban areas have to do is to take an approach called an integrated urban water management approach. Water is no longer something to be brought in pipes, but you have to look at rainwater and see how rainwater harvesting can make best use of the rain that falls on our head. We have to look at our tanks and lakes, which is our surface water, see how we can create wetlands, increase biodiversity, and protect these tanks and lakes, surface water bodies. India is a groundwater civilization. We are the world's largest user of groundwater. As I told you, this city itself has 500,000 bore wells and 600 million liters per day. So we'll have to look at aquifers and groundwater, see how we can recharge the aquifers, see how we can manage the aquifer from pollution, make sure that it's free. And then we have to take used water or wastewater and convert it to a resource. So IUWM then has this principle that all these forms of water has to be governed as one unit, and then you have a solution. But if you're going to govern it separately, like piped water with the BWSSB, lakes with the BBMP, groundwater with the Groundwater Authority, then there's very little coordination for solutions. Let's get the IUWM approach, let's get the institution to look at it, and let's involve citizens as part of the solution. Every citizen should be harvesting rain, should be conserving water, not wasting water, should, if possible, in apartments have wastewater treatment plants which recycle water, and everybody should recharge groundwater wherever it's possible. If that happens, then we don't have a problem at all.
And you mentioned there the urban architects, they don't know the historical significance of how water bodies are built, and that is causing a lot of havoc. In one of your earlier videos, you have said that the way the parkings have been made in urban, right? Everything is below the ground.
That's right. So that's a very important thing that we are now learning. Like the water below our feet is very important and very precious. That is what filled the wells. But unfortunately, we are doing double, triple basement parking. We are destroying the shallow aquifer. We are pumping out water which is absolutely clean and scarce, throwing it into the drains for 6 to 8 months. There was a 5-star hotel built close to Mount Carmel College and one near Makery Circle. They pumped out groundwater for 4 to 6 months, completely emptying all the wells in the surrounding areas, emptying the aquifer totally. Then you build these basement parkings and you put the car. The car is not only a villain when it's creating traffic jams, but even when it is parked, it's a villain there because it's damaging the aquifer and our water resources. So we have to think of our master plan and building bylaws by which these aquifers are protected. For example, if there has to be a parking created in a groundwater sensitive zone, we should have stilt parkings. And FSI should permit the apartment to go up rather than to go down. But in areas where there is no aquifer that is to be damaged, their basement parking can be allowed. This will come from a clear understanding of geology, hydrogeology, and groundwater, for which we need to do a detailed groundwater map of the city and then plan. So all these things have to talk to each other.
And then why, when government is aware of the issues, why is government
It's not aware of the issue. The thing is, these are new emerging issues. And as I told you, if the institution does not have a hydrogeologist, who do you take this case to, right? You can only write about it in the papers or do a podcast and talk about it. So one, there is a broadcaster, but very important, there's a receiver. The receiver should be able to understand what the broadcaster is giving and then be able to act on it. We are not creating the institutions which have the capability to listen and then to act on it. So therefore, we have to work on modifying our institutions, which then will be capable of acting.
I think part of the reason is our institutions have been, rather than responsive, reactionary. They wait for a large crisis to happen.
Truly. So it's in economic terms, you have something called the Kuznets curve, which says that economies which are growing take time before they can mature and create institutions. Yes. Europe cleaned up its water bodies only in the 60s, 70s. The Thames in London was cleaned up only 20 years back, right? So it's not way back that it's cleaned up. So when you get a certain GDP and you get a certain per capita income, then you have the monies to be able to invest in protecting the environment and cleaning up the pollution sources. In India, it will take another 20 years to do it. We have to be patient in the 20 years, not to do permanent damage. Whatever damage we do should be rectifiable, should be correctable, right? Only then will we be able to put our act together to clean it up. This is the inevitable cause of development in the capitalist economy, in the consumer economy. And we've got to be prepared for that. Patience is the name of the game.
And I think there's enough awareness on water bodies right now, at least in Bangalore, that every day there is something in the newspaper regarding fixing of the water bodies. So
that is there. But still, we have not created an institution which is completely responsible for water body. It still requires the revenue department to do the boundary setting, and then it requires the BDA or the BBMP to put the fence, and then yet we are not able to protect it from pollution, from sewage, because the BWSSB cannot act, and so on and so forth. With all these public pressure, with all the High Court and NGT working on it, yet we lack the right institution to govern. So you can imagine how long it will take for us to be able to repair. Right now, it's in the responsibility of the KTCDA, the Karnataka Town and the Karnataka Tank Conservation Development Authority, right? But that's a minor irrigation department institution. It doesn't understand urban waters as much as it does rural waters, right? So we still need to fix the institution.
Yeah.
Time.
Has it ever happened that before the institution understood, there has been a permanent damage of a natural resource that it never recouped?
Yeah. So there are many permanent damages that we have created. The bus stand that you were mentioning, which is Majestic, we cannot now reclaim that lake in the foreseeable future. However, when our economy really grows, perhaps at one point of time, we can relocate the bus stand and then get back to a water body. But there is permanent damage in aquifers, in lakes, and in terms of pollution of rivers. Both the Dakshin Pinakini and Vrishpavati are in really a bad state of affairs, which may be irretrievable.
Okay. So one concern whenever I travel outside to India, to developed countries, be it Australia, US, is that the tap water is the drinking water.
Yes. That is the bare minimum. See, in throughout the world, piped water supply is 24/7.
Yeah.
When you open the tap, it should be giving you water directly, and it should be potable water, right? This is the basic minimum service that an institution should give you. Otherwise, what do? We build some tanks, we put pump there, we build an overhead tank, and in our homes, we have an RO system or a UV system or a water filter. All these costs are borne by us as individuals because the state fails to deliver good, clean water in our taps. When will the state deliver those good, clean water? When we pay the true cost of water. If we pay the true cost of water to the state, then we can demand from the state that the taps should give us drinking water. The savings in the economy will be enormous. All the coping costs that we put in can easily go to the institution, and the institution can do a fantastic job. But we Indians also don't demand from our institution. Acha, kitna din pani chahiye? If you ask in Hindi, how many days do you want water in a week? 2 days is good enough. How many hours in those 2 days? 4 hours is good enough. We have gotten into a chalta hai attitude, which not only we are happy and satisfied with the bare minimum because we're in such a lousy situation. Yeah. Whereas what we should demand is that our institutions deliver 24/7 water, that every drop of sewage be collected and treated and only then released to the environment. With that demand, with that right, the responsibility is that we should also be willing to pay for the true cost of water. If we pay the true cost of water, there is no water scarcity. There is no pollution. If we don't pay the true cost of water, we can keep on screaming and crying, but then situation will not change on the ground.
And what is the true cost of water?
The true cost of water is when we release it back to nature at the same quantity and quality at which we took it from nature. If I take 100 liters from the river Cauvery, which is pure water, I use it in my home, I have a bath, I put it in my washing machine, I should be able to collect it, treat it, and we have the technology to the same quality at which we took it and release it in the river at the same point from where we took it, right? And release so that there's no net loss to the river. Yes. And then it's back into nature without damage or without any pollution and without any loss to the quantity. If citizens in Bangalore pay 95 rupees a kiloliter at current prices.
1,000 liters.
1,000 liters. 95 rupees, 1,000 liters. We will be able to get the true cost of water and the ecological cost of water and no damage to the environment. We are willing to pay 5 rupees for 20 liters RO water. We are willing to pay 110 rupees to the tanker wala or sometimes 150 rupees a kiloliter to the tanker wala. Why don't we get into a compact with the BWSSB, pay them 95 rupees a kiloliter and make sure that our environment is cleaned up?
And when the willingness is there in citizens, right? Why is not it happening?
So there is a willingness to pay, but there's no willingness to charge. And this is the negative dividend of democracy, because political parties are loath to charge people higher sums because they think they'll lose votes. And that the opposition will lay claims to those votes saying that you're raising the prices. But in this short run cycles of 5 years, we are losing out on the big picture, and it's causing great damage to the environment in India. Somewhere and very quickly we'll have to rectify that. Otherwise, we're in big trouble.
And do you think the current cities, right, Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai, it's almost said that soon they are achieving unlivability index?
At the current rate, we go, as you see, with air pollution, with solid waste management, with our traffic and transportation, and now with pollution, with our water scarcity and water body, we are quickly reaching unlivability.
Next 20 years?
20 years is too late. Already, you read in the papers day before that we've hit 1.5 degree rise in climate
Yes.
for the whole of the last year. If we hit 2 degrees Celsius, it will, with the urban heat island and fast evaporation of water, even in 5 years, it will become unlivable.
5 years. That's a very short period of time.
5 years is already too long. We need to prepare climate action plans where we are ready to learn to live with these higher temperatures and protect those workers who are most sensitive to it. I mean, imagine a traffic policeman standing in the hot sun or with that air pollution. Imagine our solid waste workers out there in the heat. These are frontline workers. Imagine the sewage treatment plant workers. They are all facing the heat and the climate change, and they are essential workers. Without them, the city will collapse. So we'll have to take care of the mitigation and adaptation, make sure that those plans are rolling out and that we do these things. Otherwise, it will be complete chaos.
So, for example, I think everybody would agree to it. Today, starting from March to June, we require air conditioners in Bangalore. Around 5 years ago, we required only fans. I had never heard of an air conditioner in Bangalore. I think around 15 years ago, there was not even fans required throughout the year in Bangalore.
Correct.
That's the state of...
So let me tell you, I don't mean to boast, but I live in a house and it's a single unit house. I don't have a fan in my house. No, forget an AC, I don't have a fan in my house. It's a question of design, and the city shows what design can do. So I have a basement. The earth that I've taken from the basement, we've built our house with it. So it's an earth block home. On the terrace, I have a white terrace for one portion where I collect all the rainwater and use it for drinking and cooking. And the other, I grow paddy. It's a green terrace so that it moderates the climate. And for the terrace, I use grey water. That's from the water from the bathroom to irrigate I don't put demand on fresh water. I just use bath water and washing machine water to grow it. Design can help us to live without a fan even now. But then design has to be backed by a neighborhood which is conducive to that. Densities which are conducive to that. Greenery. Parks and trees which are conducive, which enhances that. We have the design skills. We don't seem to somehow bring it all together to actually implement it on the ground. And as you said, if you stick an AC to an apartment, what are you doing with the heat that you're throwing out? You're simply increasing the ambient. Inside of the house is cool, but outside is getting warmer. And if everybody gets into a competitive AC mode, what happens to the city's weather and temperature? It will only go sky high, right? So we have to move away from a negative cycle, which is the AC cycle, to a positive cycle, which eschews the consumption of energy and emission of carbon dioxide and find solution for us. This city has the single largest number of modern earth homes. More than 10,000 earth homes built with earth. No other city in the world has it. We need to encourage those kind of designs, that kind of architecture, which will completely eliminate the need for external energy and air conditioners.
I think solar got a lot of visibility because of the benefits, even the government subsidies that solar come with.
Correct.
Right.
But solar is patchwork, right? So the real crisis is in lessening consumption. Solar only pushes away the pollution to some other place.
Yeah.
The manufacturing place, and then what do you do with the solar rejects, the photovoltaic cells which remain with you? So all those challenges are there. In the short term, yes, it's a better answer than thermal power or coal power, right? Coal-based engines. But demand management is at the heart of things, and better design is at the heart of things.
The consumption have to reduce. There's no other solution.
Can't afford it if we are at 1.5. The most experts suggest that 2 degrees rise in temperature is a given. and that 4 is not unthinkable. 2 is catastrophic for biodiversity. 4 will be complete destruction of what we know as the web of life. And the time is now. If carbon is at the heart of climate change,
Yes.
then water is at the heart of the impact of climate change. It's completely altering the hydrological cycle. A hotter atmosphere and a hotter ocean means more evaporation, and a hotter atmosphere means more humidity in the atmosphere, which means that when it rains, it will be heavily intense rains. Floods will be the norm. But then once the rains stop, there will be dryness.
Yeah.
So it's an alternate drought and flood at the same time, in the same month almost, with climate change. This is frightening, especially for the younger generation which is coming up. We should take responsibility for our kids and grandkids and do something for them.
This is a part of our inheritance that we give to them.
Absolutely. And it's unforgivable that a generation so destroys the world that it is unlivable for the younger generation.
Like, for example, in Delhi, 1/3 of the kids have breathing issues, either asthma
or chronic bronchitis,
Yes.
right? And that's the air pollution that we've left to them as a
Yeah.
legacy. How is it, those kids should sue us and demand reparations and demand corrections.
Yeah. And you see similar thing happening even in other parts of the Indian cities for different reasons, because we are not taking action against the climate change.
This form of capitalism and economy is relentless in its urbanization. We are now at, if you take any figure, between 28% urbanized to 40% urbanized,
Yes.
depending on how we define urban areas. Most economies in the world have ended up with 80 to 85% urbanization. Imagine 1.6 billion people, 80% urbanized, living in 4,400 cities, mostly the mega cities that they're living in. You ain't seen nothing yet. This level of urbanization that will come from distress migration in rural areas and the attraction of the city itself will cause tremendous pressure on our urban infrastructure unless we plan and invest in it. So it's a catastrophe waiting to happen unless we take quick action.
And Bangalore infrastructure, everybody is aware of, right?
Yes.
For example, one of the issues is when the rain starts in
Right.
April and May, every year there is flooding in
Right.
the outer parts of Bangalore.
Yes.
Like Divyashri 99 is one of the most popular societies in Bangalore, known for its millionaires. But the joke is every year it gets submerged.
That's true.
Why does it happen? Like, is it not planned? The infrastructure is not planned.
Two things are happening in the city. One, because of climate change and urban heat island, the intensity of rainfall is increasing.
Yeah.
We were previously designing for a 60 millimeter per hour intensity rainfall. Now, rainfall intensities for short bursts of time are recorded at 240 millimeters an hour. 180 millimeter per hour is the norm. So you're getting a large volume of water in a very short duration, which our stormwater drains or rainwater pipes are not prepared for. One. Two, previously, when it used to rain, there used to be enough absorption capacity in the city where water would percolate into the soil, into the ground. Now we are paved so much. So the runoff has increased from what used to be 15% to 95%. You have a 4-fold increase in intensity of rainfall, a 6-fold increase in the runoff. The combination of both means that it overwhelms our capacity to drain the city. So therefore, floods will be the norm as things go along, unless every house, every residence becomes responsible for what we have now designed as a policy for Bangalore for 60 millimeters of rainfall. Saying that for every square meter of roof area, 60 millimeter of rain, you either hold on in your rainwater tanks or you recharge through a recharge well. Then you have both climate change and flooding mitigation, but also the groundwater table coming up. This has to be sold to every citizen in Bangalore. Every building, every apartment, every institution should be doing rainwater harvesting. Then we can avoid floods. Otherwise, doesn't matter how rich you are. If somebody upstream is leaving the water out, you will be drowned.
You can't fight against nature and the destruction that you're causing to it.
This is a community effort, right? Individually, you can't live in an island or a bubble for long.
But it's at loggerheads with capitalism, where everybody's thinking individually for themselves and building the largest houses possible, which are getting submerged during those times.
Yes. So you have Samaj, Sarkar and Bazaar, as
Yeah.
Rohini Nilikini puts it so beautifully. So the bazaar is the marketplace. The bazaar cannot be the sole determinant of how we live. Samaj has to say these are the norms and we have to follow. And Sarkar has to make sure the regulations are in place so that they are followed. The master plan and the bylaws and what can be built and what cannot be built. All three need to work together synchronously. If one of them dominates, then there is an imbalance and that causes a problem.
Do you see somewhere in the future, or is it already in the plans, that government enforcing the solution that you told, that have these kind of tanks?
So, this is best expressed in Hindi because we seem to listen to the danda more than persuasion.
Yeah.
What, with the rainwater harvesting bylaw as an example, what Madam Jayalalitha, who's the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, did was she said that in 6 months you do rainwater harvesting or I'll cut off your electricity supply. So people complied very well. In Bangalore, we have said ki bhaiya kar lo, aapke liye acha hai, it's good for you, please do it. Otherwise, we'll give you a 25% increase in the water bill. Now, that water bill is so ridiculously low that 25% doesn't make a difference. 6 months later, we'll increase it by 50%. People are willing to pay that 50% increase fine, but not do rainwater harvesting. How do we create a democratic society where people act as citizens? We clamor for our rights, but we have also to do our fundamental duties and carry out our responsibilities. If the citizenry does not join in the solution-seeking space, if we just simply get greedy about ourselves, then there is no solution that comes to us. We have to mature as a society. Our sense of responsibility to others, like for example in Japan or in Singapore, everybody is taking care of the other, right? That's the sense that we have to develop as the generation progresses. If we don't do that, then we are in trouble.
But as a society, let's consider the whole of India. Though our GDP is 5th largest in the world, the per capita GDP is among the lowest, right? Does that kind of a society allows every citizen to strive for it as compared to Singapore or Japan?
Again, let's take the example of Japan, right? After the Second World War, when Japan was destroyed, its GDP was even lower than what India's was, right? It was the sense of community which got Japan to where it is now, right? So how do we develop this culture of citizenry in a world which is class and caste ridden is a challenge for us. And we have to appeal to the better sense amongst ourselves and aspire to be good citizens. And so with education, with children, we need to develop that sense of togetherness of community as we grow up. मुश्किल लगता है लेकिन नामुमकिन तो नहीं है.
इमेजिन करना थोड़ा टफ है कि 1.4 बिलियन 140 करोड़ लोग को कैसे आप इस चीज़ के लिए यूनाइट करोगे. आप राम मंदिर को यूनाइट कर सकते हो.
मैं वहाँ जाना नहीं चाहता हूँ लेकिन ये मुश्किल सा मामला है. लेकिन ये है ना कि unless you have dreams, you don't have narratives. Unless you have narratives, you don't see what you're working for. So if you look at the media, we're full of sad stories, problems. There's nothing that's telling us what we should aspire for, what we should do to get there, right? So those kind of leaders have to emerge from the local, from the Gram Panchayat level to the city level, to the state level, to the national level, who will then attract a momentum towards betterness. And that will only come through such conversations that we are having. And it's a larger narrative that has to be built up as a societal good as to what we aspire to do. पर जैसे मैं कहता हूँ ना कि नामुमकिन नहीं है. ये हमारा समाज था एक ज़माने में. Capitalism has made us individuals. Capitalism has broken us from the community structure. What is the benevolent capitalism that will bring together communities is something that we need to find. Examples come from Sweden, Finland, Norway, and Denmark. The Scandinavian countries are examples for us. We need to perhaps follow those kind of models.
Would love to dive into the history of migration in Bangalore for the last 1,000 years.
So this has been at the borders of 3 states, what we call it. So this is a land which had Tamil speakers, which had Kannada speakers, and Telugu speakers at all points of time in history. Some of the inscription stones show all these 3 languages. Then came the British, who shifted from Srirampatna to here in 1810 and established a military cantonment. They brought with them certain people who spoke Tamil into this, so they came. Even before that, Shaji and the Bijapur kingdom had brought Marathas here. So there's a Marathi-speaking population which speaks a pure Marathi, which is not even spoken in Maharashtra now. It's an old version of Marathi. And this has been a place where the Urdu-speaking community has been there, 10 to 15%. So it's a melting pot, historically speaking, and even now. And one would argue that perhaps the local Kannada speaker are in a minority. But a growing city is also a global city, right? So it's not just citizens from India, but also citizens from the world who are making it their home. And that's the way we should imagine ourselves, as a global city.
And what's the reason of migration to Bangalore?
Primary reason was the salubrious climate, which then brought the educational institutions. Tata set up the Indian Institute of Science in 1890s, and so therefore there came a crowd of people who were now talented and educated. So therefore the industries came to tap into this talent. The public sector units like BEL, BHEL, ITI were set up here in the 60s. They worked on a pool of educational support which was coming from the students. That public sector brought with it diversity from all across India, who realized that this was a great place. It was a pensioner's paradise, a retired person's dream. And so it kept attracting. And then the software industry took off here, and then, the rest is...
I think before software industry, why it's called the Silicon Valley of India, a lot of hardware companies...
Hewlett-Packard was one of the first to set itself up here. Texas Instruments was one of the first.
In 1970s.
Correct. And some of my classmates joined Texas Instrument then in the 80s. They joined it and they loved it. And so that was there.
So, and like larger parts of South India and states like Rajasthan face a lot of water scarcity today, right? And people are forced to migrate to other states.
Correct.
Will this, historically, has it always been like that, and it's leaving old cities deserted?
So there are different crises in different parts of India. Rajasthan and Gujarat are dried land where climate change again hits itself, but also the fact that rainfall patterns are becoming erratic and water is scarce. And the urban aspiration and demand is very high now, right? So previously we could do with very little water. Most houses in Rajasthan had tankas, and only the tanka water, rainwater was good enough for them for the whole year. But now the piped water supply in 135 liters per capita per day kind of aspiration that is there, the washing machine in the house, that puts too much pressure, which the ecosystem cannot handle, and so a lot of people migrate. Then there is the consequence of the green revolution. In Punjab, for example, groundwater tables are falling dramatically because of the green revolution and the wheat monoculture that we cultivated there. And then, of course, the fertilizers and pesticides we sprayed on the land, which contaminated the water, and therefore you have cancer, and the cancer express runs from Punjab to Rajasthan. Clear consequence of the green revolution and water misuse, right? The whole Gangetic basin that I talked about, which is so fertile and rich, now sees falling groundwater tables, which are captured by satellites because it affects the gravity of the Earth itself. Imagine the kind of impact we have. That two satellites which can pick up a gravitational anomaly and then say that groundwater table in this part of the world is falling. So food security created water insecurity, because the food came at the cost of water, right? So India, Green Revolution had tremendous impact on water. Our energy demand, we know when we got independence, we were generating something like 1,750 megawatts of energy. Now the installed capacity is some 350 gigawatts of energy. But all the energy, thermal power plants, nuclear power plants, except wind, needs water. Even solar needs water to wash the panels, right? So energy, agriculture, these are the critical ones. And they have local impacts everywhere. So therefore, when we write a water policy, we have to write it coterminous with our agriculture policy and energy policy and our forest policy, because the forests are the source of the water. But we write them independently. The energy policy is written without the water policy, and so on and so forth. The agriculture policy looks for food sufficiency, but पानी कहाँ से आएगा, क्या होगा पानी का, वो नहीं ध्यान देते हैं, क्योंकि डिपार्टमेंट्स अलग है. तो ये मैं क्रिटिसाइज नहीं कर रहा हूँ, मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि ये समझ हमें आ रही है. दिस इज अंडरस्टैंडिंग वी आर गेटिंग नाउ. तो हमें तय करना है कि हम इसको मिल के कैसे लिखा जाए. और उल्टा हम क्या कर रहे हैं, प्लानिंग कमीशन जैसा एक इंस्टीट्यूशन था जो ये कर सकता था. देयर वाज अ प्लानिंग कमीशन व्हिच कुड हैव डन इट. We dissolved that and we built the Niti Aayog. The Niti Aayog will quickly have to take on the responsibility of the planning commission and look at it in a holistic fashion. Otherwise, we'll struggle. तो कुछ गवर्नेंस के मेजर्स हैं, कुछ इंस्टीट्यूशनल मेजर्स हैं, कुछ हिस्टोरिकल मेजर्स हैं जो हमें समझना है और हमें काम करना है उसमें.
I want to talk about the impact of green revolution on ecology. Right? Can you go into that?
देखो 3 साल फिर से ड्राउट आया, 60, 65, 66, 67, 66, 67, 68. 3 years of drought where we also fought a war with Pakistan.
Yeah.
A stupid, meaningless war. From their side, meaningless. From our side, we had to defend ourselves, so we did that. So the war took a toll. The drought meant that we did not have enough food, as was prescribed. And some people argue that we had enough food, but it was wheat and rice which was a shortage. And therefore, because the urbanites were eating wheat and rice, so they felt the shortage more. जो कि मिलेट्स खाते थे, बाजरा, जवार या रागी, तो उनको उतना शॉर्टेज महसूस नहीं हुआ. लेकिन जो वीट खाते थे, गेहूं खाते थे, उनका महसूस हुआ. Anyway, C. Subramaniam was the finance minister. M.S. Swaminathan, they go to the United States. They meet up with Norman Borlaug. Norman Borlaug in Mexico is growing the high-yield variety dwarf wheat. 17,000 tons of that is brought to India, and the Green Revolution is unleashed because we wanted to be food secure. And within 3 years, we were food secure. These farmers did a remarkable job. But the Green Revolution succeeded only in the places where there was a bank loan for borewell drilling. So 10 hectares and more if you had, then the farmer got a loan from the Development Cooperation Bank to drill a borewell. And those farmers accessed that loan, drilled borewell, got groundwater, grew this wheat and increased. What happened was that the small and marginal farmer and the landless felt, ye to paise bana gaya, hamara kya hoga? They started voting for the Communist Party of India in these 12 districts. It's a very interesting study on it. So there was political ramifications. Then the government understood it through a study and then made sure that the loans were given to all small and medium farmers and made sure that they also had access to water. And therefore, the Green Revolution then became even more bigger. But what we did was we shifted to monoculture. High-yielding variety demanded more fertilizer, more pesticides, more weedicides, and more water. So the demand on water went up. We started to grow 3 crops in areas where we would only grow 1 crop of rice in the Thanjavur belt. That created the Cauvery conflict. Saw the groundwater depletion in Haryana and Punjab. So it unleashed a force we were not ready to understand, or we were not capable of understanding. And it's leaving a legacy of cancer, of dependence on fertilizer, pesticides, weedicides, which is enormous, and a demand on water which is completely insatiable. We cannot meet it with the resources that we have.
It is historically said that the US enterprise, particularly US fertilizer enterprise, took advantage of India's Green Revolution.
So we love these, what is it called? The conspiracy theories. Yeah. Some people believe in it. The fact remains that we became food sufficient. Yeah. Without the Green Revolution, we would not have had food sufficiency. But it also means that our godowns were full of grains which were rotting. इतना अनाज उगा लिए कि हमें पता ही नहीं चला कि क्या करें उसके साथ. So that also was a hit. Now, whether the war industry, the military industrial complex, or the fertilizer fellows actually had some greater dreams, I am a bit skeptical on that, but there are a lot of people who believe it.
There's a lot of opinions on that because the carbide was one of the reasons that the ramifications that came out of the Union Carbide incident in Bhopal, right? And
methyl isocyanate. See, I think many times we don't do things out of villainy or evil. It's just the ordinary, what's in English, there's a beautiful phrase. It's the tyranny of small decisions. ये महीने का, ये साल का हम एक decision ले लेते हैं. We don't think of the long-term ramification, and all those add up and cause a big problem. We'll fill up the lake. We want some land for a site. We don't think what the implication of it. Acha, abhi to problem is sorted out. But that's the tyranny of small decisions.
You think that India could have done better without so much rampant use of fertilizer and pesticides back in the day? Because we are paying the price now, whatever the decision was taken 60 years ago.
So then it falls into the democracy trap. Without the fertilizer subsidy, we would not have had the food security, right? But the fertilizer subsidy and the groundwater explosion resulted in groundwater getting free electricity. That free electricity came from a political decision of giving to farmers subsidized fertilizer and subsidized electricity for groundwater. That decision could not be taken back by any political party. So again, I would believe it's the negative dividend of democracy and our 5-year competitive democratic politics that results in this kind of misadventure, if you have it. Then it locks us into inefficiencies and problems, and we don't know how to solve it.
Then do you consider people at fault? But people are struggling for survival in India for the last many decades, right? Because whenever there has been visionaries in the government, let's say maybe like Chandrababu Naidu or S.M. Krishna here, right? who focused on development rather than giving subsidies and try to develop the cities, they were voted out.
So that's the development for whom is the question they ask. And what do you mean? What do we mean by development? There are two essential models of development. Let's say the Kerala model, for want of a better word, and the Gujarat model. So the Kerala model focuses on equity and schools, polyclinics, hospitals, local democracy. That's development. In Gujarat, it's the industrial manufacturing models. We have to choose between the two. And we have to choose that in a democratic cycle. So, batao aap.
But you can't compare, right? Because it's comparing apple with oranges. Whether Kerala ka zyada better hai, Gujarat ka zyada better hai.
Kaun तय करेगा? Who decides? Right now, there's a Supreme Court case being fought on by Kerala government saying that we've been discriminated on, and the union government saying you're mismanaging your economy. And the Supreme Court will sort it out.
I think again and then there's West Bengal. Right? You would know the better history. Would love to learn from you what happened there in the name of communism and what it has resulted in.
So, like I said, when the Green Revolution came, it benefited a few. The rest felt left out. The only way that you could bring social justice was through land reforms. The only party which was capable of land reforms was the Communist Party. The Congress was incapable of land reforms because these were the two parties there, right? So, in West Bengal and Kerala, you went for large-scale land reforms. More so in Kerala, where a lot of the rich landowners lost their land and a lot of people got their land. That people who got the land were the base for the Communist Party being elected again and again. But because you caught yourself into an imagination of industrialization is bad, capitalism is bad, so you locked yourself into a particular form of socialism. West Bengal, the land reforms did not happen as much as in Kerala. Some amount of it happened. But the rejection of capitalism was very strong. So therefore industries didn't come and therefore development didn't come. So they are where they are, right? They're there. But if you go to Kerala, the average lifespan of an average Keralite is the highest in India. Female literacy is the highest. Access to health is the highest. But economic growth is not there. Now take Gujarat, the economic growth may be high, or Maharashtra with the economic growth may be high, but there are large-scale deprivation, starvation, and Adivasis especially face malnutrition, and all those consequences are there. So some of the rich have developed very well, and the middle class has done well, but the poorer classes have been left out. Which model of development do you choose? I don't know. You choose.
But in West Bengal, nobody has done well then.
अब आप वेस्ट बंगाल वाले से पूछोगे तो वो थोड़ी बोलेगा कि वी हैवंट डन वेल. तो अब वही वोट करेंगे ना जो पार्टी चाहिए. They'll vote for the party they want and they'll continuously do that. That's the democratic cycle. Now it's up to us to be argumentative.
No industry today wants to touch West Bengal. That's the.
And so therefore a lot of argument is that you have leapfrogged pollution. Industries left a huge pollution trail everywhere. Bhopal was the classic case as you were talking about, or Gujarat in the pollution. So now maybe you have a chance to get across the manufacturing stage into the service industries or to benign industries which are not polluting and then make your way out of it. That's one argument, but these are all discussion points.
But I'm just trying to go towards a solution which can, as we earlier told, can unite these things.
So democracy is the solution. And democracy will throw up whoever leaders people want and they will deliver what the solution is. But the problem with democracy is that it's a 5-year cycle. And that's something that we don't know how to crack. And nowhere in the world have we been able to crack it. So it's not...
Even in the US, it's 5 years of capitalism or 4 years of capitalism with Trump and then 4 years of communism, so-called within.
The right wing calls it socialism. That's no socialism there. That's also capitalism in any phase. But a better example is Sweden or Finland, where you have the social democrats and the conservatives, and it switches from right to left to along those lines. But these are all political issues. It's a slow, frustrating pace, but we have to go through it.
But the goal here is, can India? It's not about following, but can India leapfrog to where the China GDP is or where US GDP is in the next 10 to 20 years?
No. Short answer is no.
And why?
China leapfrog because it started on a manufacturing base and it created havoc on the environment. The rivers, the swamps, everything was a mess. There was large-scale exploitation of the labor, which only the Communist Party could control through a very strict regime. You can't do that in the Indian context. The courts are there and they will take care of it. So The short answer is no.
And why not the development model of the US?
Completely a consumption model based on fiscal deficits of unbelievable proportions. It's only because the dollar is the only form of trading that they're able to do that. But if India were to get into that kind of a fiscal deficit trap, it will never be able to come out of it, right? So it's a difficult process. If you're able to manage even a 7% growth of GDP, it will be a miracle, and we should do that with low inflation. Otherwise, you can inflate yourself to a $5 trillion goal with the 8% inflation or 10% inflation, $5 trillion or $10 trillion economy. But in real terms, what does it actually mean is a question that we have to answer. In this global scenario,
then you have to be content with where we are. And the GDP per capita remains low.
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. So we have to ensure that there is social justice and equity with it, right? Even now, of the GDP growth, 20 families benefit 70% or 80%.
Yeah.
Is that acceptable? We have to ask ourselves that and see how we can.
But I don't see a solution to higher the GDP per capita in India in let's say next 10-20 years also. How will that happen? And how will it at least reach among the top 20-30 countries globally if we have to provide a better quality life to our Indians? Then I think the solution to the problems that we discussed could be a higher GDP per capita where citizens become aware that now I demand from the government rather than be at the mercy.
Right. So I'm no fiscal policy expert or financial expert, but in what I know of it, I think the path is difficult, and we'll have to imagine ourselves not as a manufacturing economy.
Not create a manufacturing havoc.
Correct. But a service economy. And I don't know how that service economy will itself deliver that kind of growth perennially.
IT services economy tried to do it, but it could only limit to it it became very limited.
Correct.
Just 200 billion. We need an economy which is a parallel of trillions of dollars too.
I know, but without it being an export-oriented one, how do we manage it is a question that I think the finance experts will have to answer.
So, 60% of India's population still works in agriculture, right? Contributing to 18% of India's GDP. The water issues that are happening right now and going to happen, how is it impacting their livelihood?
So it's becoming more and more uncertain. Even that little productivity they show is becoming uncertain. Farming is now a very, very seriously risky proposition, right? And you never know when the rains will fail or when the thunder will come. So it's going to be a huge challenge for us to manage the food economy for ourselves and farming economy. So therefore, be prepared for large-scale migration from the rural areas.
And that will not solve our issues, right? That will just multiply our issues, because India hasn't been made in a model that US was made of large-scale agriculture, right? Where a single farmer would own hundreds of hectares of land. Yes, India is made up of very, very small farmers.
Yes. But that's not, now we've reached 1 hectare is the average landholding size to 2 acres, 2.5 acres. Now, is that productive enough in the capitalist mode of production? No, because it's suboptimal in terms of investment in capital machinery and other machineries. How do we do land consolidation at the same time protect the rights of these small and marginal farmers so they don't have to sell it in distress?
It's very, very difficult. And for the 60% of India's population, the migration that is happening right now, that is resulting in these people becoming the urban labor.
Yes. And it's the construction industry which absorbs most of them, because construction can take unskilled labor and give them some form of employment. But how long can a construction boom last on itself, in itself, right? There are other crises. For example, the springs in the Himalayas are drying up. Water is the only source is springs. So a lot of mountain villages are just up and migrating completely. Village after village is deserted, people move out. Or in places where the villages are, it's only women and old men who are there. The young men have migrated out. So migration is a reality. So there are two ways of looking at it. One is to accept this reality and then design our cities to be better prepared to receive migrants, right? I'll just give you an example. In Lima, in Peru, what they tried out was that in the stations, because they didn't have much migration coming from any other place but railway stations, there would be booths set up where people's skills would be matched. Let's say you're a good carpenter or you have some carpentry skill or construction skill. They would point out to the areas of the city where there's construction work happening, so you seek your employment there. Or if you're coming for education or upskilling yourself, this is the place you have to go and upskill yourself. And they would tell you, give yourself 1 year in the city. If you're able to fit into the labor market, stay. Otherwise, make a choice of going back, right? So that kind of a welcoming space for migrants is not something that we have created.
Yeah.
Migrants find their own route through friends and relatives, explore the job market, are exploited many a time, and then somehow manage to fit in. I think we should be more prepared structurally to receive them and make sure that our economy bounces with the kind of input they bring in. That's a worldview. That's a way of looking at it.
So another issue with migration I want to discuss is now US is getting criticized internally, externally, that they have opened their gates to migration like anything from the south, right, from South America. And it's a reason that the current government, what is speculated is the current government wants their vote bank. Is it also true that you are seeing a similar pattern?
So this has been the conundrum with the free market capitalism economy. What does the free market argue? That both labor and capital should flow where it is most efficiently used.
Yeah.
You allowed capital to flow, but you didn't allow labor to flow because you created national boundaries, right? Fortress Europe or the USA. How can then the free market work when one part of the capitalist economy is constrained?
Yeah.
Migration is inevitable in this model. And what do you then do with the migrants? You can't pack them all off to Rwanda as the UK is hoping to do. Or you can't create fences and boundaries which will keep them out because it's part of the game, right? कर लो जितना चिल्लाना है वो तो आएंगे.
हाँ, आर्टिफिशियल बाउंड्रीज कितनी बना लो,
कितना भी बना लो. अब यहाँ से जा रहे हैं ना, डंकी बना पिक्चर, कहाँ यहाँ से जा रहे हैं, आप कनाडा जा रहे हैं, गुजरात से जा रहे हैं, they're going to the USA through Canada route. Gujarat, which is a model state, there are so many people who die trying to cross the boundaries and get there, and it's a culture there for people to go. और पंजाब वाले तो कनाडा जाएंगे ही. तो इसको आप रोकने की कोशिश करो जितना करना.
But you said it's the reform is needed to give a better quality and life to migrants, give them better structure to migrants.
बिल्कुल.
उस पे कोई काम नहीं कर रहा.
उस पे काम नहीं कर रहा. We need a ministry for migration where there's a ministry which looks at what these critical issues are in different geographies, because people sometimes do temporary migration when they get back when the rains are coming to agriculture. Sometimes it's permanent migration. And the migrant is absolutely clueless about what the city is all about, right? So only if he has a relative or a friend that there's, and then women, if they're single women wanting to migrate to a city, or if it's a women-dominated family, what is the chance that you will not be exploited, right? So what are you doing about it? Nothing. That is not the way to work.
And what our previous house help came from Calcutta, West Bengal. And she said she was the only member. Her two sons and her husband stayed back in West Bengal.
Right.
The reason she says she migrated here for a 15 to 20,000 rupees monthly job was the cost of labor because of Bangladeshi migration went down so much that Bangladeshis were ready to work for 2,000 rupees a month for 8-hour jobs.
Right. Yeah, so it's a global issue. It's no longer now. So there's no point in trying to look at Bangladeshi migrants as being...
And you can't hold them back, as you said.
How can you hold them back? You can't. Now, Bangladesh economy, at least in the recent past, was doing better. And in terms of per capita GDP, Bangladesh is ahead of India, right? Yeah. So there maybe at a point of time, the Bangladeshi will say कि ये West Bengal से migrants आ रहे हैं हमारे पे. Burmese migrant को तो लोग ही रहे हैं, वो लोग भी वही कर रहे हैं. Everybody plays this game of my nation or anything. But the people, what are they looking for? They're looking for a livelihood.
Yes, they're looking for survival, right?
बिल्कुल, survival for livelihood. And globally, we should be more welcoming. Globally, we've created such stupid barriers. Why should people die in the Mediterranean? Why should people die in Mexico, in the Sonora Desert, walking? Humanity नाम की चीज को तो भूल गए हम लोग, फूक डाले हैं.
एक चीज जो मैं डिस्कस करना चाहता हूँ आपसे, पॉपुलेशन वाइज ग्लोबली we have exploded. Never prepared कि दुनिया में 8 billion से ऊपर लोग होंगे. And India we are also unprepared that we would be the most populous country.
No, this was expected, no? But look at the bright side. The total fertility rate in Tamil Nadu and Kerala is now below replacement population.
Yeah.
In Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, it's only 4 states which have a total fertility rate more than 2.1. And everybody knows that development is the best contraceptive. That's the way that you control your population. The total attention of all other states should be in these states to help facilitate such that the population growth is automatically stopped because of development, or because of economic growth, right? It's not rocket science. This is known to us since 1971 कि ये होने वाला है करके. And there are enough models for us to tell us. तो पर वो फैमिली प्लानिंग को हम लोगों ने छोड़ दिया क्योंकि इमरजेंसी का जो नेगेटिव इनपुट आया तो उसके बाद हम छोड़ दिए. बट I think sometimes we don't do the obvious, which always is surprising. Figure it out.
Some of these issues have been because the women participation in workforce in India has been one of the poorest globally.
Correct.
And there has not been made enough attempts to solve it structurally.
Correct. You're absolutely right. But you see, female literacy is clearly associated with less population and less. And Kerala has been able to achieve that because women's literacy is there. And then women's participation in the workforce is even more of a motivator. Just go 50 kilometers from Bangalore, go to rural Kolar. The women are capable of delivering every service that is possible and capable of. They lack 2 things. One is the English language, which then opens up the World Wide Web and all the contacts and the networks that you do. Second is mobility, transportation. In the villages, if you have to get from one village to the town, you take the public transport, it take you 2 hours, 3 hours to get there, and then 3 hours to get back. And then you have a family to take care of. If you just increase the roads and mobility, you are unlocking women's participation to a large extent, right? And that's what we should look for.
That is so much common sense.
देखो पीनिया में the manufacturing, the clothes industry, there were droves of women who come from Tumkur, other places. Why are we not capable of making life easier for them through better transport services? The metro, we want to run to the airport. Why the hell shouldn't a metro run from Tumkur to Pina so that all the women can get there on time and then go back? There are markets that are created there. There's a very gender-specific landscape that's emerged as an urban planning area. What have we done specifically to address the requirements of that space? And automatically the market does that. Na? काम खत्म होते साथ ही बाहर में grocery, kapda, सब मिल जाएगा. So you can, whatever your family needs, you buy and you go. Now, why should it be informal? Why should it not be a formal system that delivers it? Why should our birth service not be more stronger there? This is just a gender sensitivity that we have to show.
We lacked in design, you can say. And
So urban design is a critical issue. And sensitivity, planning for gender, planning for children, planning for the aged and the handicapped. Where is accessibility?
It's like हमने बैंगलोर में मेट्रो बना दिया बिना सोचे समझे कि मेट्रो के ramifications क्या होंगे अगले 15-20 साल में.
आपको मेट्रो की एक कहानी बताऊं कि मेट्रो स्टेशंस में टॉयलेट्स नहीं हुआ करते थे. जब हम जाके सिविक ग्रुप्स वी सेड कि भाई देयर शुड बी अ टॉयलेट. देन एमडी सेड दैट आई एम नॉट अ सुलभ शौचालय पर्सन, आई एम अ मेट्रो पर्सन. So it took 3 years of persuasion before toilets came up in metro stations. And if this is the remarkable insensitivity that you show when running such a transportation system, forget what impact it has on the city design itself, but even within the metro itself, we have to build more sensitivity. Let me not get angry about it. But
and what is required to build more sensitivity then?
A lot of it comes from empathy. A lot of it comes from a direct contact with the kind of deprivations people feel. Only then do you understand what it means, right? So if you are to take a public transport, then you understand what needs to be remedied in public transport. If you go in a red light bulb car and you in an AC car and you come back, you don't have the sense of what the city needs. So we need more such.
I think a perfect example is Delhi Metro, because I'm forgetting the name. The architect of Delhi Metro,
Sridharan.
Completed in record time with all these facilities from ground zero, and now Delhi Metro is going to Meerut, going to all the hubs, right? So it's a world-class example of what a will and intention can do.
Exactly. And the tragic thing about India, or the specific thing about India is that it's all individual driven.
Yes.
It's not the system. It's an individual in the system who makes the difference. If it was not for Sridharan, Delhi Metro would not have been what it was, right? So our dependency on individuals, even in water sector, now we take Rajendra Singh's name, Tarun Bharat Sangh, he did this. Anna Hazare, he did this. We never take a systemic structural ki yes samstha ne ye kiya.
There is no rinse and repeat in
Exactly. You're absolutely right.
Bangalore could have just copied Delhi Metro brick by brick, nothing else.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
तो मतलब जो आप बात कर रहे हो कि 3 साल तक टॉयलेट नहीं बने, इट्स अ सरप्राइजिंग थिंग.
नहीं, जाके बोलना पड़ा कि आपको टॉयलेट बनाना है स्टेशन में करके. लाखों पैसेंजर्स जा रहे हैं, सुविधा होनी चाहिए ना. वो मैं सुलभ शौचालय में थोड़ी हूँ, मैं तो मेट्रो बना.
कभी आप चलते मेट्रो में तो आपको पता
चले.
So, you have dedicated your last 38 years. What's your day-to-day look like? अब और हमेशा मतलब कैसा?
So I love to talk to farmers, well diggers, fishers, so people who are on the ground, and I make it a habit to listen to these people. So for me, the solution for the water crisis in Bangalore will come from the well diggers who will dig 1 million wells, which will recharge all the groundwater. In the process, the well diggers will get a livelihood. The wastewater and the lakes will be maintained by fishers who will make a living out of fish in the lakes. They'll be responsible for removing water hyacinth and plastics and taking care of the lake as a water body, right? Not the middle class will go around in circles or clockwise or anti-clockwise. From them, you'll only get complaints. But those whose stake is in the game, they will do it. One of my favorite stories is a town called Vijaypura, which is 40,000 population, just close to Devanhalli airport. Raw sewage flows in a drain there. There's no sewage treatment plant because nobody had the money to set up a sewage treatment plant. Nobody wanted an STP next to their land, so nahi bana. Sewage flow ho raha hai. Farmers there pick up the raw sewage, treat it on their own land with small pits, and then grow mulberry, which then goes to become silk. The silk saris are made from sewage. I call it shit to silk. The entire sewage of Vijaypura town is consumed by farmers as a productive fertilizer, and they make a livelihood of it. The silkworm cocoon chomps on the mulberry leaf on a day-to-day basis. It certifies the quality of the mulberry leaf. If there's heavy metal, it will die. It's doing the job of the pollution control board, which is not doing any of the job at all. So on a daily basis, right? Then the silkworm itself becomes a cocoon and then it becomes fiber. The fiber itself is very sensitive. The whole process is so sensitive that no imbalance can occur there. If imbalance occurs, everything is disrupted. And that's a solution. So my question is, should the farmer be paid by the town of Vijaypura for taking care of the sewage, or should the farmer pay the town for the manure or fertilizer he gets? It's a completely financially sustainable model. It works there and farmers have achieved it. Similarly, I've seen in Jakkur Lake that fishermen keep the lake clean, right? And they do it because they get fish from it, right? So my day-to-day is in talking to these fishermen. Today morning before I came here, I was talking to a borewell driller, a filter borewell driller. It's a father-son duo who come from Madurai and drill these shallow borewells, 100 feet deep only, tapping into the shallow aquifer. But it's a skill, it's an art. So that's my day. I spend time talking to them and then seeing kahan pe ye solution fit hoga aur kya hoga iska aage.
So this is our listening time, right? What part of your time goes in building the solution, making sure the execution, which is the most important part?
Most of it is nudging solutions. So the Devanhalli project I was talking about is the first project in India where treated wastewater from Bangalore is becoming drinking water for Devanhalli town. It's toilet to tap. And this happens through a process of the city institutions treating water of great quality, STPs working perfectly. So, and then the lakes being revived so that the lake gets water. Then it filters through to the well. The well is revived through the traditional well digging community, and we put up a state-of-the-art water treatment plant through entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs who are now doing a business of treating wastewater and selling it as the market, right? So my job is to bring all these players together and say, this is the goal and we can get water to Devanhalli. By itself, no institution can imagine all the solutions. तो मेरा काम ये है BWSSB वालों को वहाँ ले जाके दिखाता हूँ, देखो भैया ये तालाब का पानी साफ रहेगा जबकि आपका STP चलेगा. यदि आपका STP नहीं चलेगा तो ये लोग सुएज पिएंगे. देखो इसका consequence क्या है. And people say, I've never seen this. They don't see it. Well को साफ किया हमने तो in the CPHEO manual of the government of India, they've given up wells as a source of water. But that well, one single well, which has kachua in it and machli in it, can give 250,000 liters of water in a 12-hour pumping cycle, right? And then that's potable water. And it's at 1 rupee 19 paisa a kiloliter, like I was telling you. Yeah. So my job is to do this large canvas visioning and get all the players. Violin bajao, guitar bajao, drum bajao, साथ बजाओ, सब मिलके बजाओ तो ये ऑर्केस्ट्रा बनेगा. अपना अपना बजाते रहोगे तो कुछ नहीं बनेगा ये करके. Mine is the conductor of the symphony.
And what has been आपने शुरू कैसे किया था?
Serendipity and just luck.
And it just became the driving force for your life.
That and Old Monk on a Friday evening.
Okay.
Both are driving forces. In the sense, there's great joy in finding solutions. What you figure out is that when people take credit for the solutions, they do a remarkable lot. And if you know that you're the spider in the web, ये वो तार वार खींचा और वो अब नाच रहा है कि मैंने किया, but आप जानते हो कि आपके कारण वो हुआ. There's a personal satisfaction that you get out of it. And then if the whole thing plays itself out well, like today, people came from Canada to see what's happening in Devanhalli. And they're going to take that message to Africa. And they'll do that because they see the simplicity of the solution and they take it out there. It's a great sense of satisfaction. A well digger digs a well, finds water, sends me a WhatsApp video. Sir, pani mil gaya. मुझे खुशी होती है क्योंकि उसको काम मिला because of the work we did at policy level and they're digging recharge wells. And every day I get 500 photographs. कोई तालाब साफ कर रहा है, कोई कुआं बना रहा है, कोई वेस्ट वाटर यूज़ कर रहा है. इन लोगों की खुशी में मेरी खुशी है. बस यही है कि मेरा जो मेमोरी है मोबाइल फ़ोन का वो ख़त्म हो जाता है बहुत जल्दी. So I have to do something on that. But otherwise, in India, work is a pleasure if you find joy in the littlest of gains we get.
And has it never bothered you कि for a large part of this 38 years of contribution, there has been financial reward जो था उसका या incentive था, that was never there?
So, see, you have to make your compromise with what you think is right. I don't own a car. I use public transport as much as possible, and I do that. And so, money-wise, maybe, but there's enough and more satisfaction that gets you there, and enough and more money for what you need to do. So it's not really a compromise. When your expectations are low, then
but you never associated with yourself with a body that you could have a regular income through the work.
So in Hindu mythology, they say that either Saraswati is your guest or Lakshmi is your guest. You can't have both of them. So you have to make a choice, right? So I choose Saraswati. That's the excuse I give myself. But I'm a lousy entrepreneur. I'm a lousy marketeer. I'm a lousy person to charge consultancy. And that's a weakness in me. It's not the American way. This is the sort of Indian way of doing it. And I think my caste has a lot to do with the way I think about it. I could have been from the trading community and I would have done better. But no, it's all part of life.
And during these 38 years, has not been there many moments where you temporarily gave up? Because change हो ही नहीं रहा, कितना भी कोशिश कर लूँ, जी जान लगा दिया.
So there's no excuse. See, once you have the intellectual firepower and you understand, you're privileged. You're among top 2% in India if you know what the whole of India's economy is about. There's no excuse then for not finding it. Then there's the cleverness in where you position yourself. Now I sit with the Bangalore Water Supply and Sewerage Board as part of the technical approval committee, right? That seat at the table does not come by itself. You have to have the right network, the right influence, and then you have the right capabilities of delivering, and the institution should respect it. Sit with the government of Karnataka in terms of the technical approval committee for the Jal Jeevan Mission scheme. So I'm able to influence the BWSSB to a limited extent, the government of Karnataka, but find that seat at the table. Don't complain that the government is doing wrong things. Go there and get it done right, whatever you think is right. There's no excuse for the young Indian who's so educated. There's no point in throwing stones at the caravan. You get on the camel rider street, make sure that the caravan heads in the right direction.
And how many years it took you to get a seat at the table to make your voice heard?
25 saal. 25 saal to log jayegi. Because you have to build a brand, right? This is as much as podcast or anything. You have to build your brand. And what is the brand? You can't be associated with the product. Let's say I'm making a water filter. Then they'll say कि ये अपना water filter बेचना चाहता है. You have to be neutral. You have to be advisory. You have to be non-tied to pecuniary benefits or monetary benefits. And your advice should be valuable in a generic sense. So for that, you have to work assiduously, and you have to be at the right place, and you have to do the
But
right
it took long 25 years to make that happen.
उतना तो पहले लगता था, मेरे ख्याल से आजकल 8-10 साल में हो जाएगा, if you're smart enough.
Because there's social media to amplify your voice.
बिल्कुल, and the knowledge base that you're tapping into the world as a knowledge base है. कहाँ, मेरे ज़माने में तो इंटरनेट भी नहीं था. इंटरनेट ही नहीं
था. I believe जो लास्ट 10 साल में कंपाउंडिंग हुआ होगा जो आप कह रहे हो मैसेज का.
अब तो कंफ्यूजिंग हो गया है, वो कंपाउंडिंग हैज बिकम कंफ्यूजिंग. द चॉइस नाउ फॉर द यंगस्टर्स इज हाउ टू चूज द राइट knowledge frame. For us, where do we get knowledge from? At a point of time when I was studying my urban planning, the only place I could get information on American planning institutions was my library. And there were only 3 libraries in India which had those books that I could refer to as what urban American planning was. Now, my mobile phone tells me what it is. Now I don't know which journal to depend on.
Which source is the right one?
बिल्कुल. It's spoiled for choice, right?
कि अगर किसी को कल पॉडकास्ट सुनना है अर्बन रिफॉर्म पे, तो ये सुने, कोई और सुने,
कौन सा सुने और किसको सुने, और कौन सही बोल रहा है, क्या नहीं बोल रहा है, ये तो बड़ा मुश्किल होता है. तो वो ब्रांड की क्रेडिबिलिटी आनी चाहिए.
It's the last, my thing is I want to bring awareness to the community of well diggers, which is one of your favorite communities, right? Tell us more about them.
So this is a community called the Wadders, or the Ode community. It could be that the state of Odisha is named after this community. They are a community which specializes in digging tanks and lakes and open wells, and they're an itinerant community. They migrate from place to place where they find work, they do the canal work or the lake work, and then they go away. So therefore they speak a language which is Odia, Telugu, Tamil, Kannada mix. They're wonderful people, very hardworking, with great physical abilities. They understand a well very sensitively, right? So they understand when the wall can collapse or not, so they are able to take care of it. If there's a gas inside, they'll put a light, candle inside, and if it goes out, they understand it's carbon monoxide, so they'll make sure that the carbon monoxide is taken out, and then they go. So they never have accidents. They do this. And this community did not have work because the borewell culture had come and nobody wanted wells. So my quest was, what do I do to help them get a livelihood? So when I was able to write the rainwater harvesting policy and bylaw for Bangalore, we made sure that we wrote a recharge well as mandatory, right? So now they are busy digging recharge wells. And recharge wells take rooftop rainwater and push it into the aquifer. So they had to be upskilled. They only knew how to dig a well to draw water out. But how to put water back in, what should be the quality of water, it takes half a day for a conversation with them, and they understand it, and then they do it. Now, there are more than 500 families to 1,000 families who are doing recharge wells all across and making a livelihood out of it and helping the city become water secure.
And these 1,000 families are in Bangalore?
In the peripheral areas of Bangalore. So they used to be previously within the city, but now they're near Sarjapur, near Ramnagaram, right near Anekal. There are at least 14 villages where these families are there. There's one particular village near Sarjapur where all the 134 families are well diggers, and they do this well digging community, well digging job.
And now they're all well placed or well taken care of?
Some of them have done very well for themselves. Some of them who are entrepreneurial go to Hyderabad, go to Coimbatore and dig wells, and they're well known and they're doing really well. Many of them have better jobs than they would otherwise have. Some of them who are not entrepreneurial have at least daily work or some work. There could be a lot more work for them.
And are there new wells coming up in Bangalore? Because I've never heard of it.
A good friend of mine from Friends of Lakes called Ram Prasad and India Cares Foundation, they just finished a well in Lalbagh in the traditional way with stonework. So there are many groups who are now working on it, and they're bringing funds from everywhere. They're bringing expertise and digging it. And Lalbagh में उनको 25 फुट पे पानी भी मिल गया. So बढ़िया है.
And these wells, just curiosity, they don't pose any a risk of people.
So we make sure that there are safety grills at 2 levels, one at the mid level at the ground level, and the other is from the top, and you make it absolutely secure. We've done wells in schools, government schools, where rainwater harvesting has brought the well back, but we make sure that there's a lock and key, and there are 2 levels of security.
I think what India has lost the culture in modernization is of hand pumps. I belong to a small city called Meerut. 30 years ago, there were hand pumps in every home. Now they have disappeared.
Because the hand pump can lift water from 120 feet to 200 feet. 200 फुट के बाद ना चापाकल बुलाते हैं इसे बिहार में सब. 200 फुट के बाद आपको 20-25 बार मारना पड़ता है जबकि पानी आए. तो 200 से गहरा चला गया तो then they've got electric pumps and motors, so that's gone.
तो इंडिया में जो ग्राउंड वाटर लेवल है वो कैसे डिक्रीज हुआ, अगर हिस्टोरिकली आप अगर बता सकें कि हमारे पास कब सफिशिएंट था और कैसे
हम लोग सालाना 250 क्यूबिक किलोमीटर पानी निकाल के बाहर फेंकते हैं, ग्राउंड वाटर से निकाल के एग्रीकल्चरल क्रॉप्स, इंडस्ट्रियल, अर्बन यूज के लिए 250 cubic kilometers a year. We have 33 million to 40 million wells and bore wells. The next two countries are China and USA. Together, China and USA don't draw out 250 cubic kilometers as much water as we draw out individually for ourselves. So we are the world's largest user of groundwater, and we're completely dependent on groundwater for all our agricultural needs, 50% of our urban needs, right? This has happened because surface water is scarce. Water comes only in 4 months, and we have to hold on to it in our rivers, and rivers are far away, dams are far away. So therefore, groundwater is ubiquitous. So slowly, incrementally, we become groundwater dependent. So for us, our survival depends on understanding groundwater, hydrogeology, making sure we recharge enough, making sure we draw less. And so for us, the goal is that if you're able to bring back the water table to an open well level, then we are water secure.
And what is the right now level in most of the wells?
In Bangalore, it's 1,800 feet in parts of the city. But in Cubbon Park, it's 20 feet. If you've done enough recharge, you can get it back at 20 feet. In Devanalli, the well I talk about is at 14 feet or 15 feet. If you're able to maintain your lake, fill it with rainwater and treated wastewater, the groundwater table will come up.
And you think that is the movement that is happening?
Haan, bilkul. And that has to happen more and more. Every one of our lake has to be saved. Every one of our lake has to be filled with water. And it has to recharge the aquifer. And we have to have demand management.
Now new wells are getting constructed. And these wells owners are demanding ki, get me 20 feet of.
No. So you have to be patient, right? It's not that 40 साल लगा दिया आपने पानी खाली करने में और आप बना दिया वेल और अब चाहते हो कि 1 साल में पानी आ जाए, तो ये नहीं होने वाला है. आपको पेशेंस रखना पड़ेगा और पानी रिचार्ज करते रहना पड़ेगा और अपने आप आएगा वो पानी वापस. So that's the biggest thing that we have lost. We've lost patience nowadays. We want everything results instant, 2 minutes.
That's why the tube wells and bore wells and all these.
हाँ, तो वो पानी देगा. But see, what happens is the tube well or bore well only talks to us twice. पहली बार जब पानी मिला, so it says पानी आ गया. दूसरी बार खाली हो गया. An open well talks to you on a daily basis. आप जाओगे, लेवल कम हो रहा है, summer has come. Please use me less. बारिश का मौसम आ गया, the water table will come up. You can use me abundantly. Year of drought, use water less. Year of good monsoon, use plenty. That connection between water availability as a resource and our consumption has been lost because the tap does not tell you where the water comes from, how much water is there in the dam, how much of it you can use. It doesn't tell you anything. The only way the tap can talk to you is if the scarcity of value of water is transmitted to you as a bill. That's not happening. So either you talk and listen to the well or you listen to the bill which the tap brings. These are the two forms of communication. If we've lost both, we will overexploit the resource.
Thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure.
I'm so grateful to you for doing this conversation and the work that you do, right?
It's my pleasure to be here, and thank you for a very interesting and wide-spanning conversation.
Thank you so much.